Hello, everyone. I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, and I'm chatting with Emmy winner Anthony Hemingway, the director of Nat Geo's Genius, Aretha. Anthony, thanks for chatting with Gold Derby today. And I just want to start off asking, what made Aretha Franklin a genius?
It's interesting. I had that question at the very beginning of coming onto the project. Because genius, the definition of a genius can be ambiguous. It can be very subjective. But I started to really think long and hard about Aretha Franklin and all the contributions she made to the world, to culture, to community, to many people. I think it's lasting. She was transformative and one that surpasses, her time on this earth. And I think not many people have that ability to do that or have done that. She's, sitting around the table with many of the other great geniuses that we can sit here and conversate about. But I think what she did, which is some of the things that attracted me, was, just stuff that I did not know. I loved her as an artist, and that is what I think most people really only think of her about or for. And that was the blessing of being able to do 8 hours of really unpacking the humanity of her, and sharing the gifts that she made and gave and shared with the world. And I think to be able to affect people, and to bring people together, connection is one of the biggest things that I really take away, and I use as an ongoing theme throughout the whole process of shooting, was just the ability of how she brought so many people together. Knowing that music is an equalizer, it has an ability to affect change. And she did that. She was aware of her times. She sang about, her songs were real stories. They were not just the hooks that we're used to today, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just that having the ability to have that lasting transformative quality, and ability to do something that we can still look back and reference, and use, I think it's timeless. And that to me is what I really believe is her true genius. She was, yes, a musical genius, but I think it was deeper than that.
And what was it exactly that drew you into this project to begin with? Because I would assume it's got to seem like sort of a daunting task to take on telling the story of someone as iconic as Aretha Franklin.
It's interesting because I can recall I started to rewind my life and think about when she came into my life. Yes, she was the soundtrack of my child. Her music was part of the soundtrack of my childhood. My parents listened to her. I listened to her. I grew up in a churchy family, so I was aware of Reverend C.L. Franklin, and his impact. Also, and then fast forward to when the TV series A Different World came out. And I loved that theme song. And so, of course, at the time, I wasn't thinking, oh my God, Aretha is so dope, like blah, blah. You just fell into the love of the song. It's one of the catchy ones that you just sing along every time it came on. And so, I just started to see the breadcrumbs throughout my life, and those times, I guess the touch points throughout my life, and where they came, and I realized how effective it was. And so I think, looking back at, I'm a 70s baby, so I am very well aware of many of, our benchmarks in history, and looking back at even civil rights and whatnot. And, it was her activism that was so inspiring to me. I am one myself that I sit and think sometimes, am I doing enough to contribute to the greater good, and and even through that, I've had to even also learn and realize and understand what my lane is, what my purpose is, and what I do contribute. And and thinking about Aretha's, I think her choices and contributions, and what I learned more even throughout doing the project, was just really inspiring. And those are some of the things that I really hope that, you know, are the takeaways from the show. You know, really understanding the perseverance, the resilience, that she had, and you get to see that she got it from, you know, she didn't fall too far from the tree. You
Right.
know, she was born into that, and I think it's legacy, and it's all that stuff that I think comes through, and, you know, wanting to honor her.
And the series does bring forward some of the sadder, darker times of her childhood and her life in general. Were you aware how complicated that was before you took on this project? And how did you make sure you told it in the right way?
I was not aware of all that I learned and discovered through working on the project. You know, you hear of some of the silly rumors that go around, that follow celebrities, unfortunately. And that's stuff that personally I don't let, you know, influence me too much, because again, it's hearsay, and even considering the source of where it comes from, you know. So you know, I in just tackling the material, it demands authenticity, it demands detail, it demands a deep dive into really connecting and understanding the subject at its core. And I think I was really happy to know that we were telling the dual timelines of her life, to really do the best we could, and shining a light on the complexity of her story. You know, it's what, I've done so many true to life stories, so I'm very sensitive to just the truth, to the respect, to honoring, to protecting, as best I can, you know, with the material. And you know, it just means that you need to, you know, surround yourself with like-minded storytellers and artists, and we had that, you know, I think both in front of and behind the camera.
And I think the limited series format allows you to do that so well as well. Just you have that time to sort of unpack so many different decades of her life.
Yeah.
You directed 5 of 8 episodes of the series. Nima Barnett was behind the camera in 2, and Billy Woodruff directed 1.
Yeah.
Do you speak to them about a shared vision, or is that just sort of blind trust that you have walking in, or how do you decide who directs which episodes?
Absolutely. You know, that's a layered question, and I'll start with saying I think as a director and a producing director that does series, you know, I'm never one that tries to um, uh, restrict anyone's contribution or what they can bring. Clearly, being an episodic director myself, also I understand what that is, coming into, you know, a family per se, and having to support, you know, and even try to find the moments where you can elevate and what you can contribute, you know. So I think this was one where it really demanded a vision and a structure in terms of how the story was to be shared and to unfold, just to be able to navigate it, you know, in a viewing experience. And so, you know, those were some of the you know, the conversations that we had. I wanted both of their talents and skill to come and deliver. So I just needed to give them a little bit of the foundation that they were continuing to, you know, we were building, you know, baking up cake over the course of the show, you know, and each one of them added a layer. And it was just making sure that that layer was in the same, it was all in the same cuisine, and it fit. So it was really just kind of sharing some of the tools that we had come to find in constructing the piece, whether it was the use of, how we, really thought about the psychology of our choices of lenses, and also, the use of color and what it meant. Everything had intention. And so it was just making sure that they, you know, got excited by that and wanting to use it, and thankfully they did. And each of them brought so much to the table. Nima is a giant. She's an OG. She's someone who I've been wanting to work with for so long. And same with Billy. We've met since I've been in LA, and respecting his work, and knowing that what episode they were both doing, that they could really execute really well. And I just loved being there to support the gifts that they contributed.
And it spans 6 decades. It goes from the 40s all the way into the 90s. And it transitions very smoothly from one period to the next. But is that more challenging to shoot something that's, you're going bam, 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 bam for decades in a row?
It takes a lot of brain damage.
Yeah.
It's challenging, it's just, being able to really, it really requires that the writers have to be on it, and they have to, and from the beginning, really have a plan. Because once you start jumping back and forth in and out of time, like everyone is spinning. I meet the actors on set sometimes, and they're just like, okay, where do I go? Tell me, what base am I on? Just to be able to land in that moment, and be able to deliver. But it's tricky. It's fun. I thrive in chaos, so I dive so deep into that stuff. And it was fun. I think it's what really birthed the brain damage of that birth, the color palette of the show, of just really trying to figure out how we could navigate jumping back and forth through time without relying on any help, any, chyrons or anything to really kind of distract from the viewing experience, and just wanting you to kind of fall into it and really enjoy it. And so that was fun. Just, it started with the first episode where I was challenged to really think about how we were going to navigate it. And it was the scene where Little Ree sings her first solo in church. That was where really kind of trying to figure out the approach to that scene is where it all started. And just thinking about that moment and knowing, the story that we were going to tell, and knowing that in that moment, seeing this innocent child that have had so much life experience already, at 12 years of age, was mature in her own right, had a gift that she was not even, I think, at that moment connecting with or was confident about. And so it was all the story that we were telling in that one moment, even before she opens her mouth. It was just taking the choices of like, rely on your faith, trust, get the encouragement from your grandmother. She's in the audience giving you that support. Your father is behind you. You're in a safe haven, what's supposed to be safe. And just get vulnerable and allow it to happen. And so it was watching her stand there nervous with fear, and then overcome that. It was all of those things of just closing your eyes and having a silent prayer, letting that energy and strength come in and really allow you to kind of open up and kill it.
Yeah.
And so it was just seeing that whole evolution in that moment, and that scene was fun. But it took a minute to really crack, but we did it, and I'm really proud of what we were able to do. And it was thinking about all of that, and then how we see color, and how we what does it translate even individually, what does it represent for you, for me, and just thinking about the void or the lack of certain impressions, from black and white, and seeing that evolve and what it does and how you feel, so seeing that whole evolution to me that's where we define the whole concept of, at least from a color palette perspective of the show. And I got super excited, got my boy Kevin McKnight involved. He got super excited. Then Tim Galvin and Jennifer Bryan and everybody else, on this team really got super excited, because for each individual one of us, in our own creative spaces, we love to create and to do things, and to find a contribution. And it was challenging, because of course, even in thinking of that and developing that, I also knew that it was still going to require so much to prove that it was going to work. Hope that the studio and the network were going to get excited and love it and support it, because I've tried to use, black and white before, and so many people tap out, they completely just, there's a disconnect for some reason. So I knew it was a challenge, but I felt it was really the right decision, and thankfully, it worked.
And I would imagine going into something like this, I would be concerned as the director who is playing Aretha Franklin. Did you know Cynthia Erivo was playing before you signed on, or were you first? Okay.
I didn't. It happened so fast. I was actually doing the finale to Power, which I did the pilot to. I was in New York, and I get the call from the agents, this project, blah, 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 blah. The next day, I'm sitting down in between setups, working on the stage. I run upstairs to an office to meet with Susan Lloyd Parks, and we vibe, we hit it off, and she forms her decision, agrees to and approves that I can come onto the project. And it just started running from that point on, so I didn't and wasn't aware. And it's weird, I never even asked a question. It was more so about kind of understanding the story and the intentions of what we were embarking to do, and that was what I was really so much more invested in that conversation, that I forgot to ask, was anyone cast? Because in my mind, it's just like normal. It seems like the beginning of something. No one's cast. I'm a part of the casting process. So I really kind of like threw that out the window. But when I learned, I didn't know Cynthia personally. I knew her work from the theater, because I'd seen her on stage, and I'd been following her YouTube clips and things of just singing. And I knew, I was like, she's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, great. That's, a relief. I don't have to think about now, what do we do if an actor can't sing? And, what's the solution to that? And so I got super excited to then meet, Cynthia, when we finally got into production. And we had such a great time. Just she and I, we sat on the floor in my office playing with her dog and just started to connect. And it was really beautiful, a great exchange. And a lot of the things that both of us really kind of wanted to bring to this, in terms of her singing live. Working on the HBO series Treme, we did everything live. And I, for the first time in working through that, I really felt and saw the difference that it is when you pre-record and do stuff. You lose so much, so many things, like just the moment, the feeling, you're watching the story play out, like when you're really standing there committing. And it was just really wowing to just watch her deliver. I remember the first day we shot her singing. It was like, I think on day 3, when we first, at the very beginning, and she came in and sang that song, I Never Loved a Man, in the booth. And just the set was so quiet and so still. And I had already, mind you, got a peek into that anyway through rehearsals and whatnot. And of course, like I said, knowing, watching her over other events that she'd done. but it was chilling. It was so beautiful. I really felt like over time that, it's the signs that we get when we do things. I really felt that the spirit of Aretha was there in all its complexities, even the challenges as well as the successes and the triumphs. Yeah.
And just as a final question, I'm always curious asking, when you were growing up, what was that TV show or movie that really opened your imagination to make you think, I want to be in Hollywood? And is there one that you consider like the ultimate masterpiece that you remember?
There really wasn't. I'm second generation, so I grew up around the industry. I've, crawling on sets and really growing up from within. It was more so people and connection and behavior and the things, that started to kind of, I think the things that I really started paying attention to. But as a child, I grew up wanting to be a doctor, so I really wasn't paying any attention to it. I love the arts in all its forms, but I think I was more so attracted to, unfortunately, I grew up around mortalities, so I think that really shaped my childhood of wanting to kind of heal and save people, and that was my direction when I was young. The getting really fully invested into this industry came late. I started working young. I was in it doing extra work, PA work, all of that. I started PAing when I was 13. And it was basically when I graduated from high school. I hit a major crossroad in life. I just really felt like all that I had prepared for, all that I desired, my dreams vanished and they completely left me. And so I felt lost. And I always share the story that, Bruce Paltrow, God bless his soul, who is someone that my mother worked with several times. And I had the fortune of working with before he passed. But at that point in life, I was 17 years old and I just was conflicted. I wasn't sure, where I was heading, what my direction was. And I was a PA on the job at the time because I didn't go to college. Thankfully, my parents just supported me to, I took that whatever year off that these kids are calling it now, the leap, whatever year that they're calling. I had that way back when. And thankfully, my parents supported me to take a minute and think, not forever, but just to figure it out. And so I knew I needed to, be independent. And so I started working. Thankfully, I had already had an introduction to the business. So I worked on this one production, and it was conversations with Bruce that just started to flip switches on for me, and then I took a minute and realized that like I've been around, I think, and connected to a place that seemed to be the right fit. And so I decided to give it a shot, and I'm thankful that I did.
Right. Well, it looks like you landed in the right place. So, Anthony Hemingway, congratulations on Genius Aretha. It's fantastically done. I want to remind our viewers here to click the subscribe button if you want to see more interviews with top awards contenders like Anthony, and head over to goldderby.com, make your awards predictions, and beat our experts. Anthony, thanks again, and good luck to the entire cast and crew of Genius Aretha.
Thank you very much.